In three, two, one.
No, no, no.
I
Go
thought the
ahead.
one was meant to be silent. Isn't the one silent?
It is supposed to be solid. You are correct. In three, two.
I'm learning how to play the bass, and I'm just coming up with like what they call ghost notes, where technically it's a note, but it's not really there. So that's what that is. That's a ghost note.
A
You're
ghost
bringing the
note.
spooky. You're bringing the spooky,
I
Chris.
like that because that's what this show really needs. It needs more spooky. But no, we actually have some really good stories this week. Chris Garlock, Harold Phillips, Patrick Dixon. You are listening to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. And guys, we have a big strike to talk about today, do we not?
Oh, hell yeah. It is March Madness. March Madness has started, and I don't know about the basketball thing. I'm not a sports guy, but I mean, we got strikes happening. We got Portland Community College. We got the WGA East walking out of CBS 24/7. And we've got the big strike that we're going to talk about today. See, I did bring it in. I saw that worried look on your face, Patrick, where you're like, we don't talk about any of this on the show. But no, the big strike.
The big strike, the meatpacking strike out in Colorado. I think we have not one, not two, but three shows and we have kind of a plan. So who wants to lay out the plan here? Patrick, you want to set us up?
Most certainly, and yes, in case it wasn't emphasized already, it's a big one. It's the biggest meatpacking company in the world in Greeley, Colorado, which is a big one, probably one of the biggest cow towns. Uh,
Hmm.
and so we're going to start with labor force from last weekend, where Mike previewed the meatpacking strike. No one was out on strike yet at that point, but he offers an overview of the kind of the nuts and bolts, the causes, the issues that were being discussed.
The issue is not simply contract language, but the broader imbalance of power between a multinational company and a workforce that endured some of the worst conditions of the pandemic while keeping the food supply moving.
And then over on Labor Exchange, which is based in Colorado, Robert is going to take us inside the strike with UFCW Local 7 President Kim Cordova and a steward in the JBS plant.
The company had issued a final offer, but to the union. However, their offer is, well, one, it's substandard. It's not acceptable to the membership. Members have voted by 99% to strike and authorize an unfair labor practice strike.
And then I think the third one is work stoppage, right, Patrick?
That's right. Work Stoppage was celebrating 300 episodes this week. So many congratulations to Work Stoppage. What a colossal body of work they've put together. But they too this week dive into the JBS strike in Colorado. So we'll listen to their take on what's going on there as well.
This extremely unsafe job, the historically unsafe meatpacking industry, the company garnishes the workers' wages of these workers if they need to have the equipment that helps them not be maimed by the machines replaced.
And just as a side note, I'm sure all three of them would love to know they have colossal bodies.
Not what you think, guys. Not what you think. From that, we go to Max on Working People. Always brings so much to his show. This week's show is a really ripped from the headline story of somebody who was a long-time legal worker in this country. And this was the interesting thing for me as a game player myself. He's a gaming champion.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just another one of these just tragic, infuriating stories. And Max does his usual fabulous job of just digging in and bringing the humanity and the outrage. Max always brings.
I think you buried the lead there, Chris, because he is an online gaming champion, but he was picked up by ICE, even though he had been in this country for years legally.
The vast majority of people being swept up and brutalized in this fascist campaign are people with no criminal conviction whatsoever and no criminal charges. At most, they have a civil immigration violation. They are not maniacal murderers and terrorists. They are day laborers supporting their families. Street vendors, gig workers, housekeepers, construction workers, farmers. They are working people like you and me.
And then we have Gene from Workers Beat Extra, who is asking a deceptively simple question: who actually counts as a worker? Which I got to tell you, I've been working on my Labor Film Fest here in DC, and that's always a question: is what's a labor film? So Gene and I are kind of poking around in the same area, so that's going to be worth a listen as well.
Yeah, deceptively simple and deceptively complex.
The answer might surprise you.
Which side are they on? Are they on the side of the workers, or are they on the side of the capitalists? And the answer to that question is pretty simple. They are agents of the capitalists. They belong on the capitalist side, and they're not workers.
All right. First up, Patrick, I think this is the biggest strike in the field in something like 40 years. Is that what I read? Did I get that right?
That sounds about right, Chris.
This is the biggest strike since the Hormel strike back in the 80s.
Okay. I didn't remember anything since. There's been some sort of one-offs, but nothing this big.
Well, the issues are really standard, as we're going to hear in labor force. I mean, these are really horrible working conditions that these people are working in.
Welcome to the Labor Force Podcast. Stories of the working class in a time of renewed labor militancy and awareness that capitalism is a rotten deal. I'm your host, Mike Strukin, proud member of New York State United Teachers. Greetings all. In strike action, workers at the JBS USA meatpacking plant in Greeley, Colorado could go on strike as soon as March 16th, after their union, United Food and Commercial Workers Local 7, gave the required 7-day notice to cancel the contract extension. The union says negotiations have stalled after months of talks, arguing the company is pushing wages that don't keep up with inflation and shifting rising healthcare costs onto workers. Union President Kim Cordova said, quote, "For months now, JBS has been insisting on poverty-level wages for workers at the plant, offering less than 2% in average annual wage increases, while at the same time putting all the risks of rising healthcare costs on workers," adding that the company has been stealing from workers' paychecks to fund the company's profits. The contract between the company and the union expired in July, and in February, around 99% of workers voted to authorize a strike while negotiations continued. JBS responded that it has spent 8 months bargaining and believes its offer is fair, saying it includes higher wages and a pension similar to a national agreement reached in 2025, and claiming the union chose to end negotiations and cancel the contract we had in place. The company also said it would keep the plant operating for employees who choose not to strike and could shift production to other facilities to avoid supply disruptions. For workers, the issue is not simply contract language, but the broader imbalance of power between a multinational company and a workforce that endured some of the worst conditions of the pandemic while keeping the food supply moving. The near-unanimous strike authorization, again about 99% of workers voting in favor, signals deep frustration and a willingness to use the only leverage workers ultimately have, withholding their labor. From the union's perspective, the companies claim that the union chose to end negotiations and cancel the contract we had in place reframes the conflict in a way that ignores the core issue. Workers are refusing to accept a deal that would erode their living standards while the company continues to generate profits. In that sense, the looming strike is not just about one plant in Colorado, but about whether the workers who produce essential goods will be able to force corporations to share the wealth they create. Well, that does it for this episode. If you like what you hear, give a rate or review on your favorite podcast app to help me grow. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with over 200 labor shows you can check out at laborradionetwork.org. This has been the Labor Force Podcast. I'm Mike Strukin. Solidarity, always.
Hey, this is Carmen Rodriguez from El Cafecito del Día. At LACLA, we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speaks. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
On Labour Exchange, Robert was on the ground interviewing UFCW Local 7 President Kim Cordova and Leticia Avalos, who is a JBS worker at the plant in question.
So here's one of the things I was thinking about, guys, that this kind of situation where you've got a major strike and it happens in Colorado, and we have got, one of our members right there on the ground covering it in real time.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have three different shows covering three different angles of it, including somebody who's on the ground, is significant.
Well, and not only that, Chris, but it's not like there's not major media coverage of this strike.
Absolutely.
But guess what? It's on page 6, and you're getting the boss's view as much or more than you're getting the worker's view. And the strength of the network is that we actually have worker center voices covering events like this JBS strike.
This is the Labor Exchange on KGNU, Boulder, Denver, and Fort Collins. I'm your host, Robert Lindgren, with the Colorado AFL-CIO and Denver Newspaper Guild. Our guests today are Leticia Avalos, worker at the JBS plant in Greeley, steward, member, and e-board member of UFCW Local 7. We also have Kim Cordova, president of United Food and Commercial Workers Local 7. UFCW Local 7 members at the nearly 4,000-person JBS meatpacking plant in Greeley, Colorado, are going on strike against unfair labor practice starting early Monday morning. The JBS meatpacking plant is the largest fed beef plant in the country. Hi, Leticia, and hi, President Cordova.
Hi. Thank you for having us on.
So we're going to get into the main issues, but we like to get to know our guests a little bit. We'll start with you, President Cordova. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Kim Cordova, and I'm the president of Local 7. We are the largest private sector union in Colorado and Wyoming. I've been a proud UFCW member for going on 42 years. Started my career as a grocery worker, as shop steward and organizer, and worked my way up to the president of our union, and also I'm an international vice president.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Leticia, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Leticia Avalos, and I've been working at JBS Food Plant since 2020, so I've been there for 6 years now. I started back in 2010, so I worked there a couple years way back, and I was actually on the line as a production worker, but now I'm with the union as a union walking steward, and I'm also on the e-board.
Great. And what was that like working on the line?
We had some good days and some bad days. It's a little bit of a difficult job, especially when your knife isn't properly sharpened or when you can't get an exchange, when it's dull, especially. So yeah, it's kind of a tough job.
And what are some of the ways that the conditions have changed at the plant?
I see that there's some unjust with the way the supervisors or the superintendents treat some of the members. I've seen them yell at them or just mistreat them. Also, for them to get like an equipment exchange, it seems like you have to jump after loophole just to get it exchanged. And I mean, that's something that they need to work safe, especially for when they're on the lines with the knives. I mean, it's a quick paced job, and they can easily get hurt. They can cut themselves. They could lose a finger even, burn themselves. Like, it's a very tough environment.
I want to invite you in on the conversation, President Cordova. I'm going to go a little broader with this question. So we're talking late Sunday. This is going to air Monday. Monday is workers are going out on strike bright and early. Can you just catch us up on where things are right now, maybe from a negotiation standpoint or from the unfair labor practices that you all have been seeing?
Sure. I will tell you, over the last week, we have been preparing, at least our union, our staff, and our members for the strike to begin tomorrow morning at 5:30. So, the company had issued a final offer, but to the union. However, their offer is, well, one, it's substandard. It's not acceptable to the membership. Members have voted by 99% to strike and authorize an unfair labor practice strike. They've engaged in multiple unfair labor practices, which has really stopped the process and interfered with our ability to negotiate a contract. So there have been no discussions since Friday before, not this Friday, but last Friday. Was the last time we actually seen them across the table. They from the beginning, once we got to economics, we want to look back at the negotiations process, they really haven't moved. They really are trying to suppress wages throughout the industry. JBS is the largest food producer and meat packer, protein producer in the world. And unfortunately, JBS, along with Tyson, Cargill, and I think there's one other beef chain, control 85% of the protein market of the meat packing industry. So they have incredible control over wages, benefits, over the supply chain. And so this is the problem with that much consolidation of power, is that they are really using the fact that they control so much of the market, that they really want to control what workers make. And their wages are so low that workers are not going to be able to live in the city in which they work. I mean, it's the cost of living in Colorado is high, and wages are not keeping pace with inflation. And it's not just about wages, but this whole dispute is about their unlawful behavior.
You have basically a 30% increase in the cost of housing over the last 5 years. So that's a big challenge. I wondered, Leticia, what's it like to see Greeley change in the time you've been here?
I was actually born and raised here in Greeley, Colorado, and it's changed a lot. Like, I see that there's a lot of more people that live here compared to back then when we were younger. Inflation, yeah, it's big. I know that we talk about that when we have our dinner. Sometimes we're like, oh, I remember when a gallon of milk was this much, or like gas prices are up the sky, or just stuff like that. So it has changed a lot here in Greeley. There's definitely more people that are working or living here.
Kim, you hit on something in your last comment, which I hit in some of my research for this, which was, I think earlier on, I there was this idea around meatpacking and being more of a specific, smaller industry. But when I was looking, it's like there's a massive international consolidation in the meatpacking industry. How is that affecting the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many antitrust lawsuits or, complaints against these companies. They're so big, and consolidation is one of the biggest threats to workers. They have so much power over the consumer, the price of their goods. They control, the supply chain, from truck drivers to cattlemen to farmers to people that are running feedlots to the frontline worker. I think the consumer is paying the highest price, at least for beef, than we've seen in a very long time. And although this company is so rich and so big, their profits are not trickling down, and they're not sharing that success with the frontline worker. And you're seeing that everywhere. I mean, there's been multiple lawsuits between, about violations of these antitrust laws. I mean, the Sherman Act was written for a reason, to make sure that there was a fair market out there and the competition would stop, this kind of power that they have over the consumer and over everybody that's involved with these companies. But yes, I mean, JBS is just a massive company, and they just don't have protein like beef, pork. They're the biggest food producer in the world.
I want to thank you both for spending time with me today. Thank you, President Cordova.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for amplifying this struggle, this fight with JBS.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for joining us, Leticia.
Thank you.
This has been the Labor Exchange on KGNU, Boulder, Denver, and Fort Collins.
Hey y'all, Adam Keller here from the Valley Labor Report. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
Like the views that the folks over at Work Stoppage brought to the strike, they take a deeper look at some of the issues that you're not going to hear in corporate-controlled media on their 300th episode. Can you imagine 300 shows every week these three get together and put out?
Actually, I can.
I was going to say, if anybody can, we can. But no, 300 it's a big number. I was just talking to somebody the other day. Oh, they want to start a film festival, and I said lots of people have started film festivals. We have so many film festivals that went 1, 2, maybe 3 years. Very easy to start them. It's very hard to keep them going, and it's absolutely the same as we all know with podcasts and radio shows. So I think 300 is amazing, and I'm looking forward to celebrating 350, 400. It's great.
And the amazing thing about the Work Stoppage crew is they still have fun with it, as you're going to hear in this cold open.
We are at episode 300, which is halfway to 1,200.
Hell yeah. Leonidas. And kicking a guy into a big hole.
I'm bringing that dumb joke back.
Those are the only things I know about the movie 300 because I watched it once, pretty intoxicated at a party, and I did not finish it. Anyway... Welcome to Work Stoppage, your favorite 300 the movie review podcast. We do labor stories, folks, and my name is John.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Lena.
And we are an entirely listener-supported show, so thank you so much if you support us on Patreon. Hop in the Discord if you're not already in there. Message us on Patreon if you want some stickers. And if you want to help out the show a little bit more, go on Letterboxd and leave a review of the movie 300 where you only talk about this show. Work Stoppage.
That's right.
Yeah, it's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we have another historic strike on our hands, and it started at 5:30 this morning. We've talked a few times about the JBS meatpacking workers, their notable precarity, their 99% strike authorization, and the fact that there hasn't been a large strike in the meatpacking industry since the mid-'80s Hormel strike, and there has never been one at this plant. One thing that we didn't talk about, on top of all of the exploitation, accusations of human trafficking, and unsafe conditions, is that the workers at JBS are required to buy their own personal protective equipment. Well, technically rebuy as soon as it wears out. That's right, this extremely unsafe job, the historically unsafe meatpacking industry, the company garnishes the workers' wages of these workers if they need to have the equipment that helps them not be maimed by the machines replaced.
The whole bargain, and this bargain is full of shit. That's the whole key thing of Marxism. But even the explicit part of this bargain that they tell you as a worker is, well, yeah, I get money without working, but that's because I own all of these things by which the work happens and provide them to you, and you're only providing labor. I'm providing all of the things, and that's why I have made the investment and am taking the risk, and so I get all the money because I'm providing all the stuff. And of course, it's bullshit because you're the one actually doing the work. You're the one putting yourself at risk. You're the one actually spending your time, so he's stealing all of your money. But again, they're like, no, we're not even going to give you the stuff. You have to bring the stuff, and we're still going to take all of them.
Tim Cordova said to Michael Sonato in The Guardian, quote, "They were charging workers for the replacement of personal protective equipment, which they are required to buy for them. Some of this equipment is $1,100, and they are garnishing that at full cost for the equipment. They've committed unfair labor practices. They've terminated bargaining committee members. They've tried to take away options on the table, a payout bonus if workers won't accept their lowball offers," end quote. Which, obviously, they are not accepting these lowball offers. As I mentioned, they are on strike as of this morning. But the company has also specifically targeted Haitian workers by specifically speeding up their lines, which has led to a lawsuit from the union against the company. It's often said in left-wing circles that moves like this show that the U.S. will never forgive Haiti for being the first nation to rise together against colonialism and slavery back in 1779.
Correct.
And will forever collectively punish the Haitian people for having the audacity to assert that they are humans worthy of dignity. And I honestly think that sort of thing is repeated for good reason, this being a prime example. As for the meatpacking industry itself, it's basically always been known to be incredibly dangerous, but was heavily unionized post-World War II. Then, in order to raise their profit levels in the 70s and 80s, they moved many of the factories from areas like Chicago to less unionized and less union-friendly places like the Great Plains region. And a horrific detail that I got out of Alex Press's article in Jacobin on the strike was from a book called Life and Death of the American Worker, the Immigrants Taking on America's Largest Meatpacking Company, where journalist Alice Driver describes how the repetitive motion of the labor that they do led poultry workers' hands to continue making the same cutting motions while they slept.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, no, that
Wow.
I'm reading a book right now on the history of automation, and one of the things that they talk about is the effect of new machines creating speed up on workers, and talking about the auto workers coming home and like shaking because of how tense they had to constantly be all day to keep up with the pace of the machine. And it's the same thing here when they up the line speed on these things. If you don't pay attention to those motions, you get your fingers chopped off.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine that, like, you're doing such repetitive tasks that while you're sleeping, your body says, no, your body just does this repetitive task all the time. Honestly, it's a baffling thought.
Well, also a big recommend if you can find a copy of the movie The Killing Floor. Big recommend. Really, really good take on that history of organizing in the meatpacking industry.
Well, and it's like your body tells you when it's time to stop doing something. Like, that's a big part of what sleep is. It's so that your brain can process all the shit that happened during the day, and it can decide whether or not something is worth doing. And if the only thing it can think of is the movement that you've been like, I quit playing Balatro when I was going to sleep, and I was like seeing cards when I closed my eyes, and I was like, all right, we got to put this game down.
No.
And I did that to myself because a game was fun. I know that's not what's happening at the fucking meatpacking plants.
No.
Yeah, certainly not. So the strike is on, and we'll see what sort of bullshit the company and the state try to pull out to attack these workers. And if you're in Colorado, anywhere near Greeley, please show up and support these folks. Like, this is a victory that has to happen. And, like, people's support is essential. And we just detailed so many important reasons why we need to stand in solidarity with these folks. So I hope that there are many different ways that people are organizing to help them out.
Absolutely.
And that is where we're going to leave it, folks. We want to thank everybody for listening. Please support us on Patreon. It's the only way that we get any funding for doing this. You can support us by going to patreon.com/workstoppage and supporting us with $5 a month. You get access to all of our awesome bonus overtime content and early access to our interviews, which we tend to unlock later. But I only bring that up because there might be some coming out.
Woo! Exciting.
Yeah. So, yes, support us on Patreon. You can also jump in the Discord to come hang out with us, get access to the news feed and all of the other things that are happening in the Discord. Follow us in all the places. Links are at workstoppagepod.com. You can also find places to rate reviews for us there. Listen to Terminal World, and as always, labor peace is not in our interest, and solidarity forever.
Solidarity.
Solidarity, everybody.
Another war. I can't wait to hear what this one's for. I can't wait to find out what will win. Bring evil to an end. Settle up the score. Another war. I can't wait to send our young and poor with promises of lower interest loans. Manufactured homes, ain't that worth killing for? And all the little people of the world, can't you hear them screaming out to sea? Promises of sweet democracy, raining down like bullets and debris. Another war. Hear that progress knocking at your door. Terrorists and Savages beware, we'll bomb you till you're free, starve you till you're fair. Another war, but after this there won't be any more. 'Cause finally the whole world will be free, just like you and me. Free to shop in any company store. And all them little people of the world, can't you hear them screaming out to sea? Promises of sweet democracy, raining down like bullets and debris. Finally, the whole world will be free, just like you and me.
Hey, this is Mark, your host on My Labor Radio, and we're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
On Working People, an urgent story of detention, family, and the fight to bring a worker home. You might not think a professional video game player is a worker, but Gene Lance is going to talk a little bit about that in another segment.
I got work to do.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Working People is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and is brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network. My name is Maximilian Alvarez, and we've got an urgent episode for y'all today that underscores the bleak reality and the abject cruelty of the Trump administration's mass incarceration and deportation campaign, and what you can do to support the people, families, and communities that are being ripped apart by it. As we've discussed many times on this show, and as we've been reporting at The Real News, while President Trump and the MAGA right have repeatedly claimed that they are targeting immigrants who are violent criminals and threats to public safety, the so-called worst of the worst, the cold statistical reality is that the vast majority of people being swept up and brutalized in this fascist campaign are people with no criminal conviction whatsoever and no criminal charges. At most, they have a civil immigration violation. They are not maniacal murderers and terrorists. They are day laborers supporting their families, street vendors, gig workers, housekeepers, construction workers, farmers. They are working people like you and me. And even tourists, academics, journalists, and gamers are being swallowed up in the dragnet. As Antonio Planas and Rondez Green recently reported in the Baltimore Banner, quote, his family described it as a routine check-in with ICE for Ludovic Bok, a 38-year-old regional video gaming champion who came to the U.S. from Cameroon legally as a teen and built a life in Oxon Hill. But Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Baltimore arrested him 2 weeks ago and sent him to detention facilities in Louisiana and Georgia. Bok's lawyer and family fear he will soon be deported back to Cameroon, where he will not be safe. He's an openly gay person. He won't be able to survive in Cameroon, said Bok's lawyer Edward Neufeld. Cameroon punishes same-sex activity with fines and prison sentences of up to 5 years. Bok also has no family in Cameroon, said his sister Diane Sona, who was born in the U.S. His arrest has mobilized the gaming community, which has helped raise nearly $100,000 for his legal defense. Neufeld has filed a habeas petition challenging Bok's arrest. In response, U.S. District Court Judge George L. Russell III ruled that Bok will remain in custody for 10 days after he requests a bond hearing in immigration court in Hyattsville, which Bok can attend virtually, end quote. to talk about Ludovic Bach's case and what it tells us about the reality behind the rhetoric of Trump's mass deportations. I'm really grateful to be joined on the show today by two guests. First, we are joined by Ludovic's sister, Diane Sona, and we are also joined by Mikhail Delahaye, a close friend of Ludovic's and a fellow gamer. Thank you both so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it, and I really, really wish we were meeting under less horrifying circumstances. I want to jump right in and ask if, you could both tell our audience just a little bit more about who Ludovic is, and then we'll talk a bit about what has happened to him in the recent weeks.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on the show. Just genuinely appreciate the support, and I especially want to give a huge shout out to everyone who has been rallying behind Ludovic. I have been in the greater fighting game community since 2011, 2012, and really being able to see people from truly around the world who all share our hobby of being able to go and play fighting games, typically in person at tournaments, at hotels, convention centers all around the world, and seeing people really tangibly support and realize the ways our community can be impacted by these policies has really bolstered our faith in a time that has been really trying and extremely difficult. Ludovic he's always say he is the exemplary example of the C in fighting game community. And there are threads on social media of people who encountered Ludovic in tournament, at a karaoke room at a tournament, had chances to just talk to him while they're waiting in line for merchandise or food. And there are so many stories like that of people who've interacted with Ludovic, because Ludovic has been in the fighting game scene for, I think, even longer than I have, like truly going back to the early 2000s. Even for context, when I went over to Sweden for the Tekken World Tournament Finals, let them know that I was in the Maryland, Virginia scene. And I said, I'm friends with like this person, and Ludovic, and people from Croatia, people from Lithuania, people from England, from France, all knew who Ludovic was. And like, oh yeah, the Chun-Li player, Street Fighter 4, the guy who beat Daigo, the guy who beat this, the guy who beat that. So all of that, having that experience in January, then coming back in February to this, really was like, even in the darkest times when we were trying to figure out what we were doing, I knew in my heart that like there were people out there, if we spread the word, that would support, because this is someone who's been and given back to a community for decades. This is someone who's been here and really made the lives richer of everyone he's interacted with for decades. And not to mention the experiences that I'm sure Diane can talk about, but video games were a huge part of his life and were a huge part of his social life. And still, even now, even calling into the facility, we let him know that, hey, the Street Fighter DLC is coming out. He looks kind of messed up to fight. Like, there's this tournament that's coming up. People are probably going to want to see you there. When you get out, let's see what we can do to make sure we get you back up to tournament speed. So it's still something that gives him comfort and hope, and still something that binds us all together. And really, I just can't say enough about like the overwhelming amount of support I've gotten from members of the fighting game community across the planet, and truly has been such a huge help to like us, the friends and family who are like helping to like bring him home, and then also more directly to the family. I heard people who have known Ludovic since 2005 who immediately have been rallying to his support and who've known the family for a long time.
So just to piggyback off what Mikhail said, again, thank you to everybody. When I got the call 3 weeks ago, I wasn't expecting this, nor did I think that we'd be able to get this turnout. I always knew my brother was sweet and he was a happy person and everybody loved him, but I didn't understand the magnitude until this. I mean, this is, of course, like you said, a bad situation, but just seeing the support that he has and the love that he's receiving, it just amplifies the fact that he is a good person and shows me, being his sister that I've known all his life, just like open me up more and be like, my brother is really a good person. He doesn't deserve this. Like, he wasn't meant to be in this situation. As you said earlier, he was doing his regular routine check-in as he always does and didn't come back out, which hurt everybody deeply. And then some. So as I always say, to know him is to love him. This has proven that he doesn't deserve this. He's not a bad person. He was just doing his check-in and just trying to be a noble citizen, mind his business, and follow the rules. That's all he does. He just likes to have a good time, play his games, dance, and eat. If he could do that all day, he would do that all day. So the fact that he's not, I know is not a great feeling. I know he's uncomfortable. I know he's not happy, and it makes me and everybody else feel his pain. Of course, we can't feel where he is, but it's just aggravating. It's annoying. It just makes you think that this administration is even worse than what it is when you see it at home in front of your face. But yeah, I'm just at a loss still, and it's been 3 weeks, and we're just waiting till Friday. My brothers were born in Cameroon. My mother came here about a year before I was born, so they stayed with my grandmother in Cameroon. From the stories I always heard, my mom always say, "Your brother just likes to play video games. All your grandma says is he goes and play video games." So when I finally met him in 2002, I was like, "All you do is play video games?" And he just told me that's my escape. That's just something that I love to do, because everybody else was into like soccer and stuff like that. He would go to the arcade for hours. Like my grandma just told me a few days ago, like she has so many stories of losing Ludovic, but he would just be in the arcade like for hours on it. So when he came to America in 2002 with my brothers, they came to be with us because mom is here. I have a little sister. Let's all live with the family and live the American dream. Met him and I was like, oh, this is my favorite brother automatically because it's my twin. Like we're best buddies. We're the closest in age, and he was just more relatable. He taught me how to do Dance Dance Revolution, how to play Tekken, how to play Street Fighter. We cooked together. He got me so hip to like anime movies, and the one movie we love is Azumi. And I never watched Japanese or Asian movies. I was like, and we would watch that back to back for hours on end, just counting how many people she would kill. And he would go back home and be like, okay, we're gonna go do this how Azumi did it in Street Fighter. I'm like, I can't do that, Ludovic. Okay, whatever. Yeah. He doesn't do that as a living, but he should. I didn't realize how big he was. He'd always say, oh, I'm the best player. I'm the best. I'm like, anybody says that, but he actually is. So kudos to my brother.
All right, gang, that's going to wrap things up for us today. I want to thank our guests, Diane Sona, the sister of Ludovic Bach, who is currently being detained and facing deportation, and Mikhail Delahaye, a close friend of Ludovic's and a fellow gamer. And of course, I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank you for caring. We'll see y'all back here next time for another episode of Working People, and in the meantime, please go explore all the great work that we're doing at the Real News Network across our YouTube channel, our podcast feeds, our website, and our social media pages. And help us do more work like this by going to therealnews.com/donate and becoming a supporter today. I promise you guys, it really makes a difference. I'm Maximilian Alvarez. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Solidarity forever.
When my face you no longer see, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever we go, we are going to roll the Union on a song. I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever hungry are we. Just as hungry can be. The song, I live on, yes, I live on. Where mean things are happening in this land, it's read a song, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever the book, mean things are happening in this land is read, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever the videotape of me is shown, I live on, yes, I live on. If I have help to make this a better world to live in, I'll live on, yes, I'll live on. When my body is silent and in some lonesome grave, I'll live on, yes, I'll live on. When my songs and poems are read, I'll live on, yes, I'll live on.
Hey, this is Judy Ansell from the Heartland Labor Forum. We're radio that talks back to the boss, and we're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
On Workers Beat Extra, we're going to Gene Lance in Dallas. This week, Gene asks the question, who is a worker? Seems simple, but it's not.
This is Gene Lance on the Workers Beat Extra. Which one of these is actually a capitalist? A prince in Saudi Arabia with an income of over $5 million a year? Is he a capitalist? A highly trained computer specialist making over $300,000 a year. Is he a capitalist? A farmer who works much harder than any of his 300 employees and does so much charity work that his actual income is less than $25,000 a year. Which one's a capitalist? I'll answer that in a minute. I want to ask you another question first. Which one of these is likely to be a worker? Which one is more likely to be a worker? A woman who sells cosmetics door to door and brings in $75,000 a year. A farmer who works alone from sunup to sundown for less than $30,000 a year. A woman with a small cosmetics shop who brings in $50,000 a year. A young man who is starting at the bottom in his father's factory with a salary of $17,500 a year. Which one is more likely to be a worker? Well, I think the point is that it's just not all that simple. What do you do with, for example, police? Police work for a paycheck just like you do. They get up in the morning or in the evening, they work 3 shifts. Whenever they go to work, they have to do whatever their boss says, and they get a paycheck at the end of it, and they don't make all that much money most of the time. So are they workers? Well, Trump has been hiring these guys, paying them buku money, big bonuses just to sign up, and then with very little training, they are armed and sent out to harass the citizens of the United States, but they get up in the morning, put their pants on one leg at a time. Their background probably is workers. They may have been born into the working class. Their mothers may have been teachers, and their fathers may very well have been street cleaners or something. So maybe they're workers, or what do you think? Well, the whole point of trying to understand class is how do we understand in order to make decisions about what we're going to do. And in that regard, you can answer the question about whether a policeman or an ICE officer is a worker or not, because which side are they on? Are they on the side of the workers, or are they on the side of the capitalists? And the answer to that question is pretty simple. They are agents of the capitalists. They belong on the capitalist side, and they're not workers. And it sometimes gets a little complicated. People who primarily make their living from owning the means of production, which is the capitalists, have quite a different set of opinions and attitudes than the larger class of people who do not own the means of production. Those who do not own the farms and factories generally sell their labor power to those who do. Workers and capitalists tend to have very different opinions and attitudes. So, you could split hairs, and that's what I did when I asked those questions. A good way to tell who is what and what their attitude is to ask them how they feel about the minimum wage. If they want to increase the minimum wage, they're probably on our side. And if they want to keep the minimum wage down or decrease it, or get rid of it, they're on the other side. Now, going back to those questions I asked at the beginning, which of these is more likely a capitalist? A prince of Saudi Arabia with an income of over $5 million a year? He's not a capitalist. He's an aristocrat. He's got hereditary wealth. They're born into the royal family, and they're rich for the rest of their life. So they're not capitalists. It's not a matter of owning the means of production. What about a highly trained computer specialist making over $300,000 a year? There's your worker. He's not a capitalist because he doesn't own the means of production, does he? How about a farmer who works much harder than any of his 300 employees and does so much charity work that his actual income is less than $25,000 a year? Well, you could say he's a capitalist because he's got 300 employees and he does own his farm. That's the means of production. The second question I ask you, which of these is more likely a worker? Number one, a woman who sells cosmetics door to door and brings in $75,000 a year. Yeah, she's a worker. A farmer who works alone from sun to sun for less than $30,000 a year. Not a worker. He's actually making his living because he owns the farm. Not because of the work that he's doing, because he owns the farm. A woman with a small cosmetics shop who brings in $50,000 a year. I wouldn't say she was a worker. She's probably in the middle class because she owns that shop. It's not part of the means of production, so she's not a capitalist. But she's a what they sometimes call them a small capitalist, or in other words, a middle class. Here's a young man who is starting at the bottom in his father's factory with a very low salary. Is he a worker or is he a capitalist? Well, it's his father's factory. So I would say he's born into the capitalist class and he's going to stay there. So I wouldn't trust him to be a worker. So the reason that we want to know is because the activities of the classes are quite different. Here in America, there's really only two classes that matter. One is the bosses, and the other is the employees. And their attitudes and needs and the expression of their political work is quite different. And we need to know who is who and what is what. This is Gene Lance on the Workers Beat Extra.
And now let's move into our speed round, shows you should know.
On the Green and Red podcast, Scott talks with organizer Matt Leonard about one battle after another, political homage, film references, and what it says about resistance today.
From the Labour Heritage Power Hour, highlights from a special International Women's Day program celebrating Women's History Month and the role of women in the labour movement.
On the Workers' Mic, Ed and Phil talk with IBEW Local 601's Brian Anderson about a campus construction protest. Share labor news and talk about a big Chicago labor parade. Spoiler alert, there was a Green River involved.
They love a parade in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Over on The Wealthy Ironworker, Rusty digs into the labor shortages we've created, looking at education barriers and the disappearance of entry-level jobs.
And on Boiling Point, Michelle, Clayton, and Mark tackle big picture politics, from the impact of losing USAID to a critical look at the SAVE Act.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly.
You'll round up from more than 200 shows in the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
You can find links to every show at laborradionetwork.org. And remember to follow #LaborRadioPod on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and even the social network that shall not be named.
X. X.
He named it. Tell us what you think. info@laborradionetwork.org.
Support the network in your fashion choices with union-made T-shirts. 2 colors, all sizes at laborradionetwork.org.
Hey, real quick, guys, Labor Notes is coming up. Anybody's coming to Labor Notes, you're going to want to have your Labor Radio Podcast t-shirt because you're going to see us in them and you're going to want one. Order them now.
And seriously, It's a good fashion choice. Also, seriously, this podcast is recorded under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement because union strong all day long.
For the Labour Radio Podcast Weekly,
stay active.
Stay tuned
to your local labor radio or podcast show.
And we'll see you next week.